We call this a learning week. That's what it was. In a lot of ways. Some that haven't manifested yet, and others that we'll figure out as we go along. How many of you have thrown out your televisions? Didn't think so. Didn't think so. Sometimes I want to. Sometimes I want to do an Elvis, and you know, they say you would get mad sometimes, you would shoot the screen out. Guess when you got the money like that, you can do that. I can't. I tend to lean a little heavy on the on and off switch myself. The gun is kind of expensive. But like I said, I don't watch a lot of television these days. I tend to not like being programmed by it. That's what that is. Why do you think they call it television program? They're programming your mind. But every once in a while, something will come up on television that seems to crystallize our biggest national problem in a way that we don't see very often. Few these days will be honest about what the problems are. They become very obvious when you look at them, but sometimes we don't always see it. We are so busy being programmed by, and you can tell by what we're being programmed, how much we argue about it. Notice how we bicker about Colin Kaepernick and his silent protests about police brutality. And we argue about the violent, biased treatment of minorities when arrested by police officers. Now, of course, those who've ever been pulled over by the police and had it happen, that's not much of an argument anymore because you don't question whether or not it did happen because you've experienced it. Of course, if you haven't experienced it, how do you know? And it's easy to say within your ism, oh, that didn't happen. They're not telling the truth. Oh, they're lying. Oh, the police do the right thing at all times. You gotta be kidding. That doesn't happen. Surely he did something. So we continue to argue. We argue about the Me Too movement and how women are treated in the workplace. Now, of course, those ladies who have been pinched, groped, and had inappropriate things say to us or to you, it's not a question anymore. It's not an argument. It's real. It's understandable. And I can see you being upset. And other people should be upset too. For instance, the other men who sat up and watched it happen went instead of grabbing the guy in the collar and say, hey man, wake up. Now that's what you want to talk about somebody. That's why, you know, whenever you hear somebody using slang or anything like that in something that's serious, you know, then you should take it seriously. But why do you get silly? Don't say get woke. Say become awakened. Then you might get other people to listen. Oh, y'all better get woke. No, you better learn English. Oh, no, you don't mean that. Oh, yes, I do. I don't say anything I don't mean. But we argue about these things. We continue to argue about these things. Others cheer that the president is, in their words, moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. When in point of fact, all he did was move the embassy there. He's not the president of Israel, so he can't actually move the capital. All he can do is move the embassy, which he has done. And they get all excited about that because something great is going to happen. But in the moving of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and if you know anything about Tel Aviv, you understand why it moved. And I know all of the folks that are working at the embassy are now saying like, wow, where are we going to go to party? Oh, Ray, shut up. Just telling the truth. Well, anyway, Nobody's talking about, however, the bombings, the killings by both the Israelis and the Palestinians and their backers. This confusion, if it continues unabated, will eventually lead us into World War III. But we're still cheering about the moving of the embassy because we don't understand fully what's really going on over there. Yet no one in this modern context can be fair because the partisans on neither side will be honest about what's really happening in the Middle East. Nor will either side accept that Elohim has a definite plan for that land, that neither side will accept as valid even when it comes from him. That's why he's going to have to grab them by the throat and crush them, those who will not obey. But more on that later. Honesty, however, is necessary here. No, we don't like that in this. We like to tell people what they want to hear. We don't like honesty. None of these are humanity's biggest problem right now. Oh, they made it all sound like it. Remember when they thought, oh, wow, there's going to be riots on the field about these silent protests. But if you really think about it, there was a great article, I can't remember it off the top of my head, where they talked about how awful, and he wrote it, and there was an article, he said, I was reading this article about the protests about the Colin Kaepernick protests. And he read through it, and it was very violent. They talked about, oh, we should take them down. Oh, wait a minute. No, this isn't about the Colin Kaepernick protests. They were talking about the lunch counter things with Martin Luther King back in '66. Bottom line being, to the people who are in power, no protest is quiet enough, except for the one that never happens. But you're in a free country, therefore, if you're gonna have a free country, part of that freedom is the ability to complain when you have something that's wrong. We'll talk about government in general at another time when I've got more time to talk about it, but this isn't the time to talk about that. But all of these problems are outgrowths of the larger problem. All of these national problems are direct results of the impossible imbalance mankind has set in motion. Anybody know what I'm talking about yet? Didn't think so. Keep going. No one dare speak of the true problem. You'll never hear about the true problem on television. They're going to hide that from you. They don't want you to know about that. They don't dare speak of the true problem in the modern world because it has become so much a part of our mentality, so much a part of who we are as people. Yet, it is spoken of plainly here.
That's right. That's right.
That's where they talk about it, in the Word of God, in the Word of Elohim. And the Bible puts it in its proper place rather than to lie about it or say it didn't happen or, no, we're not really that way. That's not how we are. That's how they are. Choose your own they. We all have one. And they don't like to deal with it as we have to in this 21st century modern context. What do they call the 21st century? Listen. I was being nice. We don't like to deal with it in this millennial context. Let me shut up. Note the words of Yeshua our Messiah. Let's drop anchor. Matthew, the 6th chapter, the 19th verse. This is where the rubber meets the road. Matthew, the 6th chapter, the 19th verse, where it says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, don't miss this. For where your treasure is, there your heart shall be also. Many believers have been ensnared in the ways of the world because we have known no other way. We were shown no other way because they don't want you to know any other way because they like us right where we are, in shackles, but not the physical kind that restrain you. You go back to that television, the programming of the mind. The biggest part of that program is to shackle the mind so that you only think about what you are told to think about. Feel what you're told to feel. Remember, notice how your brain thoughts come in from anywhere of any of 360 degrees. But they wanted to filter into either of two isms. Either you're a conservative or you're a liberal or a progressive. First of all, what's the first three letters in conservative? That's exactly what it is. Now, everybody get, if you're gonna throw rocks, remember, everybody got to get stoned. So, if the conservatives are cons and the progressives are, what's the first three letters in progressive? Ask the girls on the street what they call them. Hello, what is it? A pro. Now, is everybody sufficiently mad? Can we go on? What I'm saying is, you got cons over here, you got hoes over here. Same thing, as far as I'm concerned. But if you can only think within that narrow parameter, you're going to miss all this.
That's right.
So maybe it's time to think a little bit differently and expand your horizons a little bit and come along. We've got a story to tell. You see, it's only gotten worse over the years, and we have no indicators of just how to live as we have tossed aside the Bible and its whole way of teaching us how to live. We don't want to talk about the Bible at all from either side because they all have their own little book. As we saw it in Bible study this morning, they've all got their own little book that they teach along with the Bible that says that the Bible don't mean anything. All of our education centers on our problem. And you can't make very much money in this world without this world's programming. Education. Many lose their perspective in this because of the wide path leading toward it and the forced reality that we live under from within it. We know them. There's only a few ways to get a lot of money in this society. One is at the business end of a gun, but Dillinger will tell you that only goes so far. A lot of the other ways of making money, we know them. You know, the nefarious little connections to groups that do not serve Elohim. You know the ones. You'll never make much money without joining one of these groups or the other. You're going to either get a degree from a college, and that might do okay for a while, but in order to really make that degree pay for you, you got to have friends. How do you make friends? In your Greek societies. Oh, he didn't say it. Yeah, he did. What they say, everybody got to get stoned. Everybody got to get stoned. Now, if you don't make it in through a fraternity or a sorority, you got to get in a trade union. If you get in a trade union, a lot of the trade unions have secret little groups that allow you to, for instance, the police union, where you actually become part of the Masonic Lodge or some other secret society. We forget what we've done to join these groups because we were so young when it happened. And many were already in them before we found out that what we did to get in was a sin. But that's no big thing. We don't worry much about Elohim when the money starts rolling in because the money is more important. Or is it? You see, back in the 80s, there was this film that came out called Wall Street. The hero of the film, if you could call him that, was a young man named Gordon Gekko. Not Geico, Gekko. He declared loudly at one point in the movie, "Greed is good." Well, our title today is a little late, but it's straight, but it's a retort of sorts. Our title today is Greed is Not Good. Greed is not good. Oh, but we think it is. For ever since that film came out, the disparity in wealth has grown in this world. Someone in power believed that, obviously, because they've certainly put all their money, or should I say, our money into Wall Street to make sure that these things kept going the way they wanted it to go. And as many others have done since. And through this, Satan has introduced these ideas into our consciousness in a stronger and stronger way. You see, this attitude, even among believers, is no new thing. This didn't begin, as some may assume, with that pray and pay gospel stuff that you see on your television programming again. It didn't start then. Although it is now flooding our television and radio airwaves and television, internet, and anything else where you can hear these men talk about, "I'm going to make you rich, but we're going to get me rich first." They don't tell you that, though. Ezekiel, no less, spoke of it concerning the Israelites back in his day. Let's go to Ezekiel, the 33rd chapter, the 30th verse. Ezekiel, the 33rd chapter, the 30th verse, where it says, "And you, son of man, the sons of your people are speaking about you beside the walls and in the doors of the houses. And one speaks to another, each man with his brother, saying, 'Come now and hear what the word coming from Yahweh is.' And they come to you as people come. And they sit before you as my people, and they hear your words, but they do not do them. For they produce much love with their mouth, but their heart goes after their unjust gain. And behold, you are to them as a singer of love songs with a beautiful voice like Luther, and playing well on an instrument like George Benson. For they hear your words, but they are not doing them. So when it comes, behold, it is coming. Then they will know that a prophet has been in their midst." The prophet has been in their midst. We're so caught up in the ways of the world that we don't understand why 2 end-time prophets will be sent to warn us all from Jerusalem. Because even they haven't got it right now. And this will be their last chance. And will, for many of us, be our last chance to get it right before the hammer comes down. Why? Because we're so caught up in the world that we don't think about Elohim much while we're struggling in it. How many of you people you know that's sitting at work and when it starts to get rough, they open their Bible and read or just close their eyes for a hot second and pray? I used to do it all the time because there was nothing else. But most people don't think about it while they're struggling in it. And we've worked so hard, and in some jobs, they bring so little true satisfaction. Just, you have just enough to survive. Even some don't even have enough to survive, but they survive anyway. The new statistics of how many are working are totally misleading. Everybody's getting back to work. They don't tell you that those are part-time jobs. They don't tell you that sometimes you work 2 or 3 jobs just to survive. Yeah, the number goes up. Oh yeah, we're darn near at full employment, but is it full people working? No, sometimes you work in 2 and 3 jobs. And it sounds like everybody's back to work, but that's not exactly what's happening. Because some of us, as I said, have worked 2 or 3 jobs just to survive, having little time for their families and even less for themselves. Their children are left at home with a key. They call them latchkey kids. And this is even more disturbing with all of the sexual evil that's being reported now from the Chicago public school.
That's right.
You don't know what the kids are going home, the teacher's not following home and trying to mess with them, if you will. Hopefully there's some people who are going to go to jail behind that, and a whole lot more. But you don't know what your kids are going through at school while you're working 2 or 3 jobs. All of this messing with your head and pulling at your money. To call this greed would be wrong. This is just survival. This is just survival. Survival in a world that seems to care little about us. Anybody says, they're looking out for us. They're making it great again. It's getting wonderful. Okay, let's look at how wonderful it is. The water's polluted. But the water bills in Flint, Michigan haven't gotten any lower than the lead levels in their toxic water. Chemtrails swirl around us in the air and make us sick. But the doctors say, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what could possibly be causing your COPD. How many of you even heard of COPD 10 years ago? Hello. We don't know what could possibly be causing your asthma. It could be the chemtrails, and in the case of children, maybe it's the idea that knowing that teacher wants to see you after class in the Chicago public schools. You hate to throw all this stuff together, but stress will also make you sick. And all the money in the world isn't going to relieve psychological stress. Money is like a hammer. As long as you got a nail, you got something to work with. Money will pay a bill, but it won't heal a child. There's a problem here that have to be dealt with, and they have to be dealt with as a system. Otherwise, we just got more problems. There are many other breathing issues that cost more and more and more to be covered by health coverage that does little to make us well. As a matter of fact, the best thing they do is covering you with a blanket and sending you to the morgue. They do that very well. As far as if you're still alive and ill, they're not going to, here's a word that you don't hear very often in conjunction with illness anymore. Cure. Don't hear that very often. What they talk about is managing your illness. And what does that mean in round the way language? That means we're going to drag it out over as long a time as we can so that the medical cartels can profit from them. The reason I call them medical cartels is because they're doing the same thing that the cartels are doing coming up out of South America and out of Afghanistan. selling you drugs and making you money. So you can either get your drugs from the medical cartel or the drug cartel. It's all the same. It's all the same. No. Many of us might be greedy on some level, but not on the level that has made this earth a lust-filled ball of sin. Few are aware of just how bad things have gotten financially. They're only aware of what the media tells them, which is not very much. That's why they're so quick. We're so quick to call protesters whiners. Even when we know with our own two eyes that those protests are valid and need to be. But even more importantly, the protesting need to stop when the thing that they're protesting stops. That's what should stop. But though we whine about that and we say, oh, why are they whining? Why? Many people let the police off easy when they brutalize citizens. That's why many whine when anyone asks for, ooh. When the last time you heard them talk about this on television? Higher wages. Why do they whine whenever anyone says anything about higher wages when the media tells us that $15 an hour is excessive for work? That's too much money for a job at, say, a hardware store. Oh no, $15 is excessive. That's too much to work at a hardware store. That's too much to be a secretary. That's too much to be a receptionist. That's too much. But $5.7 million a year is the median salary for a CEO. And nobody says a word about that. That's median. That means that there are just as many making below that. The floor is $4 million. How'd you like to have that as your floor? Wow, that would be my ceiling, to be quite honest with you, but that's just me. That means that you've got as many people making $4.3 million a year as there are the top salary in the United States for a CEO is $10.5 million a year. It comes out to like $700 an hour. Nice work if you can get it, huh? Nice work if you can get it. But you see, the human issues in this area are not difficult. They're really not. You see, if everyone had enough to live comfortably, if most of our work was fulfilling and gave us a feeling at the end of the day that we're satisfied, that we're helping somebody, rather than coming home so tired and so full of drudgery, and then have to deal with all of the headaches we have to deal with from poverty level wages. If everybody had enough to survive and didn't have all of these headaches, many of our problems, and especially our stress, would disappear. But the modern society has become so corrupt and so complicated that equity would only ease the burden. It wouldn't end it, but certainly wouldn't eliminate it. Not that even with all of the news of so many being employed, has anybody noticed this? I asked the question this morning, and I ask it again now. What is the second highest cause of death in America right now?
Suicide.
Yes. The rise in suicide figures lately defies biblical wisdom. But then, what doesn't these days? In fact, you go look over this material, and as I did it, I noticed a shockingly untrue statement that was rendered as fact by Time magazine, a magazine that I've avoided reading for years just because of such insane media-driven insanity and drivel as this. Notice the first line in an article about suicides among the middle class. Oh, they were expecting it to be among the lower classes because they're not smart enough to understand how to navigate through a complicated system like this. So surely it's the poor folks that are killing themselves, right? How many of y'all have been poor folks? We do pretty good with difficulty. We weren't expected to make it this long. Especially the slave classes. You weren't expected to make it this long. We were supposed to be killed off by now. But we're a pretty hardy bunch, kind of like the ancient Egyptians. Might be the same stock, who knows? But, be careful. But, the magazine just flat out lied. Listen to this, as far as talking about suicide among the middle classes. Happiness is directly related to how much money we make. We've known this for a while, so it shouldn't be surprising that our earnings also correlate with the suicide rates. Who writes this crap? And in reading the article, the facts prove just the opposite. And then they try to justify it with 21st century nonsense. It says, you might assume that suicide rates would be elevated in lower income neighborhoods and counties, and the study's authors do find and point out that higher incomes generally lower suicide risk. It didn't say rates, it said risk. For example, an individual with a family income less than $10,000 in $1990. Notice they can't even be honest enough to just draw a straight line. They're going to bring you in 2018 something based on $1990. How many $1990 do you have in your purse right now? Let's be real. How many of your $1990 actually made it into 1991, much less 2018? These people are crazy. In $1990. Let's go and be real for a hot second, okay? See, if everybody read Time magazine like that, they would be out of what? Time. Because nobody would be reading that crap anymore. It's like I remember when People magazine came out years ago, I used to spell it a little bit differently, P-E-E-P-H-O-L-E magazine. But that's just me. Just a step above the Inquirer, if you will. And I mean a little baby step, but still. But like I said, for example, an individual with family income less than $10,000, in all honesty, $10,000 in 2018, you'd have been lucky to get there. You'd have never seen 1990, much less 2018. But they say that a family with income less than $10,000 is 50% more likely to commit suicide than an individual with an income above $60,000. It ain't gonna kill you. What's gonna kill you is the fact that you're broke and you can't pay your bills, and once you slip to that point, the phone calls that you ring are not gonna be your friends calling to tell you everything is all right. Hello, this is such and such. We're just calling to see if you're going to pay your bill. You're going to pay your bill this month. All day, every day. The twist comes when you look at low-income individuals who live in high-risk areas. Please don't miss this, people. This is where the lie is, and it's time to stuff it. According to this study, they face greater suicide risk than those living in low-income areas. The study's authors call it a behavioral response to unfavorable interpersonal income comparisons. Now, let's put that in some language from round the way. Let's put this in some other words that y'all have probably heard from yours truly. Some folks are killing themselves because they can't keep up with the Joneses. Human ego. Now, you know why? This is why I'm always telling you all not to try to keep up with the Joneses. We know now that not only are they broke too, but they might be killing themselves because they can't keep up with you. Just something to think about while you're reading their nonsense. Sad, but that's what we've been driven to. Oh, I'm doing okay, but Mr. So-and-so next door, tell you a story, and I hope she's not going to hear this. I'm going to be honest with you. I noticed it when we first moved out here. When we first moved out here, we had a little blue car. Y'all remember we ran it to death. It's like we've run my baby to death. And he's still popping. We drove up in the driveway with this blue car. The neighbors, I won't say whether it's to the left or the right, within 2 days, here they come with a brand new blue Jeep. It's on blocks on the side of the house now. Ours got sold and we traded it in for another one. They already had one, but they had to have the same one we did. We bought a grill. We look over there. We got the same grill. Went out and had the deck painted. Look over there. Paint the deck's the same color. I keep thinking about going out and buying a Bentley and then taking it back the next day. I shouldn't say that, but like I said, that's Bad Ray. Y'all have heard about Bad Ray, right? Bad Ray thinks about doing stuff like that, but the Holy Spirit in Ray says, no, that's not how I live. But you think about doing that sometime when you know somebody is that dependent on, oh wow, I gotta have everything they have. Why don't I bring you my bills? Why don't I bring you my bills? There we go. Now we're making sense. But this is what we've been driven to. This is the problem we're having. Remember when you used to meet people? Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm probably a little bit different. People don't want to talk to ministers. They just don't. They just don't. Remember when you used to meet people? I remember when I used to meet people. Don't meet people now. Now people come to you when they need something, but whatever. When you meet someone for the first time, unless you're a weirdo like me, what's the first thing you ask them?
Where you work?
Where you work?
What do you do for a living?
What do you do for a living? Yeah, exactly. Yep. What do you do for a living? Because you see, when you ask that question from this point, you can get close to figuring out what they're making. I don't care what you've got. I frankly don't care what you got. I'm more interested in what you believe in. I'm more interested in how you feel about life. What do you think? Because if you're not thinking right, I don't care how much money you got. You just got more money to do evil. So I want to know who you are, not what you have. Because that's not helping me. Telling me what you believe in, that tells me more about who you are, not what you have. But notice how Yeshua rips Time magazine's theory apart. Let's go to Luke, 12th chapter, the 13th verse. Luke, the 12th chapter, 13th verse. Then someone from the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But Yeshua said to him, "Man, who Who made me a judge or arbitrator over you? Then he said to them, watch out. Be on guard against all kinds of greed, because one's life does not consist in the abundance of the material goods he possesses. And what did these nimliks at time just say? Oh, you're measured by how much you have. They should rename that magazine Out of Time magazine, because if they keep thinking like that, they're out of time. They're definitely out of step. Proverbs, the 23rd chapter, the 4th verse. Proverbs, the 23rd chapter, the 4th verse, which says, do not wear yourself out to get rich. Be wise enough to restrain yourself. In other words, find something else to do. When you cast your eyes on riches, it is gone. For it surely sprouts wings and flies off into the sky like an eagle. Most of the world's population would be happy to simply have enough. But all of the lies about college bringing wealth and that everyone in America can suddenly become rich if they have a college degree. Shut up, Ray. You see, these delusions have everyone believing that it can be done, and it really doesn't matter how it's done. But even with the help of the unions, Masonic lodges, all these other little secret groups, and all the ones that I mentioned earlier, all you can make enough to live comfortably. But by the time the corrupt banking system gets to you with their inflation, by the time you receive all the bills for all of the stuff you bought, trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to live comfortably is a joke. Why? Because behind your back, here are all the corrupt politicians taxing you and lowering or eliminating taxes on the corporations and rich businessmen that move into your neighborhood. They do it here. I won't say here where here is. You know where I am if you know where we are. They take money and they'll pay the village president so much money under the table, and they let them come in and they'll set up structure, have the people come in and do everything, build up fronts for your nice building and everything, and for the next 5 years, you don't have to pay any taxes. Well, okay, the business doesn't have to pay any taxes, but guess whose taxes go up? Ours. And you wonder why you don't have enough to make the left touch the right. This is wrong. But you'll never hear it discussed in a manner that appears to get close to solving the problem. In other words, relieving our taxes. Oh, they're lowering taxes, but raising tariffs and everything else. So there's going to be some money coming in from, oh, we had the biggest tax break of anybody. And it'll be just like after 2008. You'll find out that all the money went to the top 1%. Y'all ain't got mad yet. I'm not done. Now, the Bible dealt with all of this early on. But nobody wants to hear what Elohim had to say. He talked about banks not loaning out money at interest. He talked about not stealing your workers' wages by cutting them off. They talked about not having two sets of weights in your pocket when you're selling stuff. you put a lightweight on when the guy that you like comes in, so his stuff doesn't cost so much. And when the guy he doesn't like comes in, he puts the heavyweights in there, so you pay a little more. The Bible talked about all this. But oh no, we don't want to hear that. Especially now that the rich have co-opted the system and have no intention on giving it back. No intention on giving it back. But they sit a guy that's rich himself, come up there talking about we're going to make it great again. When for the folks that put him there, it's already more than great. It's wonderful. You see, according to the latest financial data, and I got this yesterday, it just came out a couple of days ago. The world's wealth is now estimated to be how much? Anybody got anything like a guess? The world. $280 trillion. Now, how many zeros is that, Smarty? 12. 12. That's 280 and 12 zeros, if you're counting. Now, as usual, when I counted the accumulated wealth of the allegedly richest people in the world, and notice they claim that there are no trillionaires. I know of 3 myself. Rothschild is one. Bush is another one. Rockefeller, not that one. Rockefeller is another one. But when I counted the accumulated wealth of all the alleged richest people in the world, that total came up a little bit short of 280 trillion. So some apparently don't want their wealth counted publicly in the counts that are given to the public. That would be you all. That would be us. For a variety of reasons that I don't know, so I won't guess in this format. We're not here to guess. We're here to read from this book. But with that much hand-wringing and hiding of stats and lying going on, you better know somebody knows what's going on. Elohim knows how much has been stolen from us all. But know this, and this was what blew me away. And see if you don't get just a little hot under the collar when you find this out. 300 people hold within themselves $140 trillion. 300 people hold $140 trillion. That means that 300 people hold half of the world's wealth. 300 people. Let's put this in some numbers that you can understand. These 300 people hold the combined wealth of India, China, the United States, and Brazil put together. 300 people. 8 controlled 56 trillion by themselves. And I'll give you a couple of the games so when you listen to them talk about killing people with vaccines, you'll know who I'm talking about. Bill Gates is one. Mr. Bezos from Amazon, who got most of his in the last 4 or 5 years, is number 2. And I won't give you the other 8. You look it up for yourself. It's out on Google. It can be found. It can be found. This is a game. It's a wicked game. It's a wicked game. You come to realize that the rest of the world is scrapping for, when you play with the numbers, 12% of the world's wealth. That means 12% of the world's wealth is divided evenly among roughly 5 billion people. out of 7. As of the other 2 billion are basically broke and poverty stricken. And those are the ones you see on TV with the flies flying around their heads and that. And there's other stories that I could tell. I could go for there's hours of research in this. There's hours of research in this about how they'll go to a Central American country and say, we're going to relieve your debt. And then turn around and say, oh, you owe us interest on that. And they got just as much money coming back to them as is going down there. And most of the money winds up in the hands of the rich down there. So the folks down there who are allegedly being helped by our aid are broke and starving. Which explains why every time you turn around there on TV talking about, you're going to give me $20 and we can eat this, they can eat off of $1 a day. Makes you feel like, why? You want to help. But when you consider how little money we actually control as individuals, how can we be called greedy at all? But it's not an easy subject to rationalize without the word of Elohim. Can we be considered greedy by living in nice, spacious homes, furnished with all the modern conveniences of modern life, when there are millions around the world living in shacks with no indoor plumbing? Did we do it? How much of it were we responsible for? Well, how many times did you vote for these people? That's your level of responsibility. While the super rich control the world and could change the poverty of the world overnight with very little effort, we are being told that we're greedy when we have nice cars in our driveways and expensive toys in our homes. Yet now, if you don't have a cell phone, you basically have no way to contact anyone. And they're making the phones more and more and more expensive. And now they're just walking up to your car and just reach and snatch your phone right out of your hand and run off. And turn around and sell it on the market. What they should do is cut off the market, but no, it's all about money. So if somebody has to hit you in the head and take it, so what? They made money off of it, so who cares about you? You hate to think that way, but that's the way it is. We have all of these toys, yet others have little to nothing. But even within our limited resource pools, we still must honor the word of Elohim and do what we can for those whom we can help when it is possible. He has given us a guideline. Let's go to Psalms, the 41st chapter, the first verse. Psalms, the 41st chapter, the first verse. To the chief musician, a psalm of David, blessed is he who acts wisely toward the poor. Yahweh will deliver him in the day of evil. Yahweh will watch over him and keep him alive. He shall be blessed on the earth, and you will not deliver him to the soul of his enemies. Need more? Galatians, the 6th chapter, the 9th verse. And this one hits a little bit closer to home. Galatians, the 6th chapter, the 9th verse, where it says, but we should not weaken in doing good, for in due time we shall reap if we do not faint. So then, as we have time, let us work good toward all, and especially toward the household of the faith. But please know this, Elohim is aware of all that is being done on this planet. Oh, he doesn't know. Oh, yes, he knows. They know all of the schemes. They know all the evil. They know who hatched it down to the dollar, down to the penny. And all of it is being accounted for. Every deed, everything done He is aware of all of it. So don't, oh, he didn't know about that. Somebody should tell somebody. Isaiah, the 11th chapter, the 4th verse. Isaiah, the 11th chapter, the 4th verse, which says, "But with righteousness he will judge the poor and decide with fairness for the poor of the land. He will strike the land with the rod of his mouth and with the breath of his lips, and he will slay the wicked." Need more? Oh, there's plenty. Hebrews, the 4th chapter, the 12th verse. Hebrews, the 4th chapter, the 12th verse, where it says, "For the word of Elohim is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing right through to a separation of soul and spirit, joints and marrow, and able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart," where it all starts. "No creature is hidden from him, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give account." So don't worry about them. They're going to stand before a judge too. Just let us make sure we don't for the same reasons. You see, the rich and powerful always have believed that there is no Elohim to put them in their place. They have always been able to bribe their way out of any trouble or roll over the poor and take everything you've got. But there is one end that they never, ever consider. They know it's coming, but they whistle by the graveyard as if it's never going to come. Luke, the 12th chapter, the 16th verse. One guy's had, 8 hearts? And I'm still here. I'm okay. Luke, the 12th chapter, the 16th verse. "He then spoke a parable to them, saying, The land of a certain rich man yielded well. And he was reasoning within himself, saying, What shall I do? Because I have no room to store my crops. Oh, I've got so much money, I don't even have anywhere to put it. And he said, I am going to do this. Pull down my storehouses and build greater and store all my crops and my goods there. Then he says to myself, life, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, rejoice, or be merry if you have that. But Elohim said to him, you mindless one, this night your life shall be demanded of you. And who shall own what you have prepared? Can't take it with you. There's no luggage racks and no cash box on the hearse. It's not there. 21. So is he who is storing up treasure for himself and is not rich toward Elohim. Many put so much effort into anger over the schemes of the rich and powerful that they forget that the Eternal is also aware of all of our little evils too. He's aware of many that we know nothing about, and all are covered in his word, and he has already promised that he will repay. Leviticus, the 19th chapter, the 11th verse. Almost done. Leviticus, the 19th chapter, the 11th verse, which says, do not steal, do not lie, do not deceive one another, and do not swear falsely by my name and so profane the name of your Elohim. I am Yahweh. Do not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of him who is hired is not to remain with you all night until morning or keep it in your pocket forever. which basically was what that meant. If you could hold it for one day, you could just make that day, oh, well, I'll give it to you tomorrow. And then you get there to that next day, well, oh, I'll give it to you tomorrow. In other words, tomorrow never comes. You understand what I'm saying? Right. We've seen that game played. We've seen that game played. You just didn't recognize it when you saw it in the Bible. That's the same game. Oh, I'll give it to you tomorrow. Tomorrow. Oh, no. Elsewhere, he warns us that the greedy will not inherit the kingdom of Elohim. He means that those whose lives are characterized by greed cannot be true believers. Can't happen. But he's warned them anyway, since if you want to play, this is how I play. James, the 5th chapter, the 1st verse. James, the 5th chapter, the 1st verse, where it says, "Come now, rich ones, weep, howling over your hardships coming on." Well, these folk were untouchable. They can even keep the banks from knowing their names. But hardships coming on? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Your riches have rotted, and your garments have become moth-eaten. Woo. Your gold and silver have rusted over, and their poison will be a testimony to you and will eat your flesh as fire. You heaped treasure in the last days. It's proven that most of the money these people earned was earned in the stealing of the money. Remember when all the money crashed in 2008? Most of those trillions went straight up to the top from the period from 2008 to now. And how did he know? He's God. He knows everything. And he's telling us, but we don't read the book, so we don't know what he's saying. But what did he say? Your gold and silver have rusted over, and your poison will be a testimony to you and will eat your flesh as fire. You heaped treasure in the last days. The fact that it happened now lets you know what days are these we're heading into. He's telling you everything. You just got to listen. The Spirit will tell you. Ask it. It'll tell you. It'll show you. 4. Behold, the wages of the workmen who have reaped your fields cry out, being kept back by you. I know you're not paying them enough. Oh, 15 is not enough. Buddy, let me tell you something. If they were still giving out the COLA, the cost of living adjustment every year as they were supposed to, you know how much the minimum wage would be right now on everybody? $28.15. And they're whining about 15. Shut up. And the cries of the ones who have reaped have entered into the ears of Lord Sabaoth. Didn't hear that word often. He's the Lord of the Sabbath. He's telling you what day also. He's giving all these hints that we've got to listen for. 5. You lived luxuriously on the earth and lived for self-pleasure. You nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. You condemned. You murdered the righteous. He does not resist you. He can't. You've got too much power. Therefore, brothers, be long-suffering until the coming of Elohim. Behold, the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being long-suffering over it until you may receive the earth, the early and the latter rain. You also be long-suffering. Set your hearts firmly, because the coming of Messiah has drawn near. Do not murmur against one another, brothers, that you may not be condemned. Behold, the judge stands before the door. The other little hint, when somebody's standing at the door where they're about to knock, that means they're there. My brothers, as an example of suffering ill and of long suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of Elohim. Behold, we call them those blessed who endure. You have heard of the patience of Job, and you saw the end of Elohim, that Elohim is full of tender mercy and pity. But before all things, my brothers, do not swear neither by the heaven nor the earth nor by any oath, but let your yes be yes and your no, no, that you may not fall under judgment. In other words, everybody's going to have to account for what they did. Make sure you tell the truth when that time comes. Yes, all rich and wealthy will be punished for their sins. This is true. But we have to understand this, that they are not the only ones with secret sins. Their sins are noted and will be judged. But no matter what we have, we're all charged with not being too eager to get more or to covet those things that belong to our neighbors. Greed in itself, in any measure, is a serious sin, and this should be avoided. Wealth is a serious responsibility to do good. Paul says that greed is tantamount to idolatry and brings the wrath of Elohim. You go to Colossians, the 3rd chapter, the 5th verse. Colossians, the 3rd chapter, the 5th verse, where it says, therefore put to death your members which are on the earth: fornication, uncleanness, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Because anything that you want that bad, you've put in place of God. Just to make it clear. Verse 6. On account of which things sake the wrath of God is coming on the sons of disobedience. He says again in 1 Timothy, the 6th chapter, the 9th verse. But they who will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which plunge men into destruction and perdition. For the love of money is a root of all evil, of which some, having lusted after, they were seduced from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. But you, O man of Elohim, flee these things and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and meekness. Not the same, meekness. And we're given one last warning of the thoughts and sins that we should avoid. For first comes thought, then comes the deed. We will be judged more harshly as people of Elohim. So we must set aside our hypocrisy and our sins of evil. We can't do what the rich do in secret or root for them openly as if what they do does not hurt or bring harm to the poor and the weak of the world, because it does, as we've seen that. Let's go to Psalms, the 50th chapter, the 7th verse, where he finally has to upbraid his own people a little bit. Psalms, the 50th chapter, the 7th verse, where it says, hear my people, and I will speak, O Israel, and I will testify against you. I am Elohim, your Elohim. Do not for your sacrifices do I reprove you. I don't spank you for your sacrifices. No. Your burnt offerings are continually before me. I will take no bull out of your house, nor he-goats out of your folds. For every beast of the forest is mine. The cattle on 1,000 hills are mine. I know all the birds of the mountains by name, and all moving in my fields are mine. If I were hungry, I wouldn't tell you, for the world is mine and the fullness of it. All 280 trillion of it, plus the hills, plus the land, and everything else. It's all mine. Just keep that in mind. 13. Will I eat the flesh of mighty ones? And will I drink the blood of he-goats? Offer thanksgiving to Elohim and pay your vows to the Most High. And call on me in the day of distress, and I will save you. And you shall glorify me. But to the wicked, Elohim says, what is it to you to proclaim my statutes and to take up my covenant on your mouth? Yea, you hate instruction and toss my words behind you. When you saw a thief, you were pleased with him, and with adulterers is your portion. Question: why is no one, you hear people now, oh, that's not even a big deal. Why y'all even bothering about that? Okay, so I ask, you Christians, why is no one angry about Stormy Daniels or Donald Trump? And for all the rest of you, go back a few years, I wonder why was no one angry about Bill Clinton? That girl was 19 years old. Why? Because we wink at adultery. It's cute. You got people that sit up and see their family cheating on their others and giggle about it secretly. But Elohim is exposing all of our secret sins and lusts in these end times. Every administration, almost everything brings up our hypocrisy. Oh, he can't do that. He's a Democrat. Oh, he's evil because he's a Republican. Evil is evil.
That's right.
Don't have a label on it. I remember when my dad my mom would go out and bring back, we got to have Heinz. Did it come up out the ground with Heinz on it? Did it come up out the ground with Democrats on it? Did it come up out the ground with Republicans on it? Why y'all so locked into these labels? These labels are a lie. The truth is this. Get with this. You give your mouth to evil, and your tongue frames deceit. You speak against your brother. You give fault to the son of your mother because they're in the wrong political house. Please. You have done these things, and I have kept silence. You thought that surely I would be like you. But I will rebuke you and set an order before your eyes. Now, think of this. You who forget Elo. That's the only time in the book he used his name. Maybe we ought to be listening. But now, think of this. You who forget Elo. Lest I tear and there not be any to deliver. Who, after all, is going to deliver you from me? Whoever offers thanks glorifies me. And he who prepares a way, I will show the salvation of Elohim to him. Elohim is still there to lead all who are willing to follow and obey him. We must recognize that greed is not good, and our secret lusts for it will not have a pleasant end if we don't repent of them. We will be punished just as all sinners if we don't continue in the righteousness of Elohim. Period.